Welcome back, baseball fans, to this Eliminating the Detroit Tigers video. The Tigers were the top seed in the American League. They really were. They had an impressive year. They really did as far as sweeps. In the regular season, they played one game more than the fewest you could possibly play, meaning that their series ended quickly. But they also got swept a few times, otherwise they would have been undefeated, I guess you could say. So yeah, they were swept. They were swept 4 straight by the Expos in the regular season. They were swept 3 straight by the Twins. However, they swept the Tigers. They swept the Ohio team. They beat Cleveland 4-1. They beat the Expos 6 out of 7 in the tournament, and they beat Toronto 3 out of 4. Divisional round, they beat the White Sox 4-2. League championship 4-2 again over Baltimore, losing the World Series 4-3. I mean, this Tiger team. I mean, the statistics aren't overwhelming, but this team definitely played that great strategy winning baseball when it came to clutch performances in the right spots of your roster. Just a .253 hitting team, but I'm happier with that .331 on base. The 56 home runs in 51 games, we'll take that. Offensively, we had, of course, Mickey Stanley and Gates Brown having monster years in a platoon sort of scenario, batting third most of the time. The two-headed monster, I call them. Willie Horton, all-star appearance. Norm Cash. These names sound familiar. They were in the '68 series. You know, Horton, Cash, Northrup, McAuliffe, Lolich, Freehan. They just ran these cards back into the early '70s. These guys aged like fine wine. It's amazing. K-Line, incredible on base. 48 walks in 51 games. Northrup struggled a little bit, I guess. Only 1 home run for him. 2 for McAuliffe. Also struggling with on base as well. Shortstop and third base continued to be a problem, hitting below the Mendoza line with not much production either. Of course, the pitching is going to be led by Lolich, who faltered in the World Series. I mean, he had those 11 big wins. He was dominant in the League Championship Series against Baltimore, but the Pirates figured him out in the World Series. Actually, only in one of those 3 starts, really. He got knocked around in Game 1. He pitched 10 innings in Game 2 and lost. And then Game 7, they let him in there, left him in too long, got knocked around in the 7th inning of a 4-3 defeat in Game 7. There's not a lot to argue about Mickey Lolich. It's just that Pirates are better. He met his match. You got to give some props to your opponent. Joe Coleman was a more than capable number 2 guy in his 2nd World Series in the last 3 years. Did very well against the Mets 2 years ago in a World Series, so they're happy with him and Lolich at 1 and 2. The problem started at 3 and 4 with Bill Hands. They got him in the offseason. He didn't do very well. And Terramin should probably be considered. He was in the bullpen last year, the number 4 starter this year. Maybe next year he goes into the 3 spot because he pitches pretty well, but just not enough innings. Brilliant bullpen should be coming back. Hiller and Sherman and Culver. Amazing bullpen work. Probably the best performance of a bullpen. They could be considered the best bullpen. The Mets have a great bullpen. The Orioles have a great bullpen. But yeah, that's the performance of the Detroit Tigers. Let's take a look now at their card set. I've actually separated the 71 cards already for the analysis here, so we can actually take a peek before we do a deeper dive at the end of this video. And in this list, you can see guys that, oh boy, you hope they come back for the Tigers, and other guys, you know, that you're expecting to move on or retire. But let's start this analysis by, of course, looking at the 12 guys coming back for the Tigers. And it looks like they're going to go with the conventional, 7 and 5 format. That's 7 hitters and 5 pitchers, which means you don't have a glaring need in either hitting or pitching. You have a catching platoon coming back, though Bill Freehan's probably not happy about that. Stevenson against righties, Freehan against lefties. Stevenson can't throw, Freehan can. It's a nice little platoon, really. Stevenson was an angel, actually. Second base, you still have McAuliffe and Verizon and Terrell. McAuliffe, that's a fine year for him in '73. This Verizon card is intriguing. Which is why they thought they could give him a full-time job, and he got to the World Series. He just didn't perform very well. The 3.44 defense is, again, I think it's just going to hurt you too much in the playoffs unless your opponent is equally bad, and we saw that in the World Series, as I hammered that point home many times. Terrell's just a utility player. He's okay. Here's the great Willie Horton 74 card. I'm not sure if it was an injury or suspension or what happened to Willie while he played less than half a season. And Jim Northrup, outstanding card. How's it? You know, it's 73. He's hitting 307. It seemed like he went from 280 to 270 to 260 to 250, then boom, 307. Great year. Of course, he just had one home run, which was an anomaly. He should have had like 12. Pitchers, this Steve Keeley was the long guy. He was actually a White Sox, but he's fine. You know, no big deal there. I went out of order with the pitching. Let's start again with the top. So Lolich is coming back to run this card back one more time next year. Bad news for the rest of the American League. Mickey Lolich, he'll come back. Cuellar will come back. Wilbur Wood will come back. Vito Blue will come back with a different card, perhaps even a different team, as the big lefties in the American League. Here's that tournament card I mentioned. Maybe it's time for this guy to be your number 3 starter. Can't pitch on 3 days rest. But he had a fine year in 72, got injured and missed the postseason. So in this replay, you could use him for a more substantial role. And 2 parts of that outstanding bullpen. This guy was just sitting out there in the draft, getting ignored, mainly because he's a right-handed reliever, which are easier to find. And again, he's not that great against lefties. So he's pretty common in that regard. Though you look a little closer against righties, you like him, and the stats are pretty good too. 3.06 ERA in 97 innings. Was an Astro. Astros just had too many righties, so he was kind of hidden in the Astro minor league, and the Tigers went out and got the dude as a nice compliment to this guy, John Hiller. 10-5, 144 for Hiller. Arguably his best year, and he had a magnificent World Series. You can't ask for anything more. Had 3 saves. He had 11 saves for the year. Had a 0.44 ERA with his card, and a relief 3. So yeah, he can get some 2-inning saves for you. So future is still bright, as if this team wants to roll this thing back with these older guys one more time, 72 to 75. Though the 8 guys that are missing are probably going to start to decline in performance a little bit, and that's where we'll pick this up at. Of those 8 players, who are we going to keep, who are we going to waive, who are we going to retire? All right, we're back here with the 8 Tiger eliminations, beginning with Gates Brown. Oh boy, the Rock. It was more about fear and intimidation of him on the on-deck circle. Because actually you could potentially live with, in a carryover league like this, you could live with the production, because a lot of guys, you know, will be ridiculous with their cards. I mean, like I said, Willie Stargell, Hank Aaron, insane cards. So Gates Brown's, there it is, 338. In 68, by the way, there he was again. This card exists in Strat, the 370 1127 card. In the 68 season, of course, you get this card in the 68 season, you could do some havoc with that. Yeah, 11 home runs, 195 at-bats in just 82 games. So he's 32 years old. He has been a pinch hitter to this point, part-time player, bad defensive player. It's a shame they didn't have the DH sooner, like in 69. It's an interesting discussion that I'm wondering if in the 69 year of expansion, if the designated hitter was also considered then, to put it all together at once. The 69 and the DH, the 4-team expansion, and that's introduced the DH in 69. I'm sure there's probably discussion, we'll call it, but it was probably said, no, there's no way. You can't do that to baseball. You can't have a designated hitter. And then by 73, we get one. So you see, he gets a full season with the DH in 73. He doesn't do a whole lot with it. His own base is nice. Power's just not quite there. He's got the 12 homers, but it's a ton of at-bats. Lifetime Tiger. I'm not crazy about, well, this guy looks like a waiver candidate to me, but I just can't wrap my head around him not being a good DH or pinch hitter or somebody that you could, to get a key hit in a key moment here. So we know he can get waivers in 72. We can double check that by looking at the 72 Tiger roster. You put him in as an outfielder. There he is. I'm going to make him a keeper for now, and that's a good thing for the Tigers to do, because if you find better players, put them on waivers at that point or trade them. So that's the plan, right? So you start with a good note, meaning that you really want to keep Gates Brown. Will it last? This is a really talented Tiger team, so it might not last. Next up, Norm Cash. Norm 71. What a season. He just missed out on the All-Star game. He went there a year ago. The All-Star game was in Detroit this year, in the 71 All-Star game I played. So I put Norm Cash in the home run hitting derby just for fun. He did okay with that. He walked off the league championship series in Tiger Stadium with a home run, which, if you try and visualize that, would have been just an incredible scene in Detroit. One of the, and then he hits a home run in Game 7 in the first inning, a 3-run bomb, but the Tigers lose Game 7. So Norm Cash had some amazing history for my carryover league right there. Didn't quite, get that legendary status. Here's the 71 All-Star performance with a 903 OPS. 2 more pretty decent years for the Tigers. This is look at the age. Look at these age. I mean, it's unbelievable how great Detroit plays in Strat-O-Matic with these older players. So Norm Cash is coming back. Give him a King, give him a Walker, I don't care. These dudes probably can hit today. Get them out there on the field today. In 2023 they can probably hit. Alright, next guy. Billy Grabarkowitz has really milked a nice long Strat-O-Matic career at just a couple years in baseball, being productive. But good for him. This guy has been to World Series for the Dodgers, World Series for the Tigers. He has been a full-time third baseman. He's been a good defensive shortstop, second baseman, and third baseman. There's 70. So he had this card there forever. Look at this 70 performance of 1784, the 95 walks, the 399 on base, and All-Star, okay? But Ron Say's in the pipeline. Steve Garvey starts at third base in this pipeline, and they don't have any room for him anymore in LA. Tigers said, we'll take him. So they took the 25-year-old Grabarkowitz, okay? 225, but look at the on base again. Look how close it is to his All-Star year. And he's still got a glove, folks. He's a 2E14 at third, a 2E8 at second. So I think I've had Grabarkowitz for 5 years of carryover league play out of a guy who just did that. And then after that, it's not very spectacular at all. And we're evaluating the 72 performance. You see, it's very similar to 71. The on base isn't quite good enough, It's just not quite good enough in 72. 73 and 74, not so much. This is a candidate for waivers. So he's got to have a card in 72 for the Dodgers. We're going to take a peek at the Dodgers and see if they made his card as an extra player. There he is, right there. So we're going to put him on waivers, and that means that the Detroit Tigers, for the 3rd year in a row, they're on the clock looking for a third baseman. Aurelio Rodriguez is with the expansion Las Vegas team, and they've locked him up to a long contract. They got his 73-74 card, so he's not going anywhere. So Detroit's going to have their 4th third baseman in 4 years next year. They had Elliot Maddox, they had Clete Boyer, they had Billy Grabarkowitz. I don't know who they have in the pipeline, because we know that Ed Brinkman and A-Rod are there the whole decade. So I don't know who's going to play third base for the Tigers next year. Is there a rookie? A guy like Larry Parrish is on the Expos. That would have been a nice player to bring up if he was in your organization to play third base. So I don't know what Detroit's going to do. That's kind of the fun thing. It's a shell game. They have the same 7 starters except for third and short. All right, next player is Al Kaline. And folks, he'll continue. There's nothing to worry about here. And he can continue in the outfield if you want him to. He doesn't have to go to DH just because he's getting up there in year for the Hall of Famer. So close to getting another World Series ring here. Here we go. Was an All-Star in '71 with the card you saw. 294. Now he's 37. Now he says, you know, it's time to hit 300 again. Crazy, folks. It's nuts. There's something in the water in Detroit. Maybe it's the little ballpark. Maybe it's the long grass in the infield. I don't know what it is. But these Tigers are a fun bunch of cards to play, folks. And Al Kaline's going to run it back. It's like 1968 all over again for Detroit. It's a fun story. I'm really, you know, I didn't really know much about the Tigers before I started playing Strat in this timeline. And boy, they are a fun group of players. They really are. He's coming back. Next guy, Mickey Stanley. This could be a little bit bittersweet because he had his best year and he had performed with it. Not just this defensive, you know, superstar defensive center fielder. He had the ability to hit left-handed pitching. Right here, 292. Overall, just a 733 OPS, but missed out on a Gold Glove, though he was still a 1. Look at another Gold Glove in '73. Full seasons in '72, '73. He's not going anywhere. Oh, and he's a lifetime Tiger. It's hard to move. When you're a lifetime player, it's hard to justify letting that guy go and go into an expansion team. So I think Mickey Stanley will come back. Well, there's 4 so far. As we expected, they love their guys. Now we go to pitching, beginning with Joe Coleman. So this will be an interesting one here. Coleman's still got a long time with the Tigers coming up here. He will move on to Oakland at a certain point. He was a Washington Senator, a Tiger, and then he finishes up in '76 with the Cubs, A's, Blue Jays, Giants. But he's still got this Tiger tenure here. And he gets better in '72 as well. Look at that. Doesn't win 20, wins 19, wins 23 in '73. Oh, this is silly. This is no-brainer territory. And now you're seeing, remember that Gates Brown I started with? Yeah, I gotta just, you know, he's now on waivers. I'd have no room at the end for Gates Brown, and that's fine. I mean, he's not that important in the grand scheme of things to let him. And you know what? An expansion team, right, would love Gates Brown, you know, because those expansion teams are always looking for guys. They get expansion teams get guys under this scenario. A traditional Major League Baseball team like the Tigers can't keep all their guys, and whoever gets left off goes to an expansion team. We saw the Mets in back-to-back years lose Tommy A.G. and Don Clendenon. So it could be that Gates Brown ends up on the Blue Jays or the next team. Maybe it's the Seattle Mariners. The next team that starts poaching players off of an all-star roster, you would hope it to be an expansion team for competitive reasons. 2 more pitchers. Bill Hands, not associated with the Tigers at all in this timeline. They went out in free agency and got him to be the number 3 starter because he could pitch on 3 days rest. Was between the Cubs and stops with Twins and Rangers. Really had a nice 69. There we go, 20-game winner in '69. Great year for him. And this is the '71 card we played with a 3.42 ERA. His last year pitching on 3 days rest, which is really not that big a deal. And frankly, as a 3 starter, you don't typically want your 3 starter pitching on 3 days rest anyway. Just your 1s and 2s, ideally. So, '72 with the Cubs, fine season. Excellent season. Cubs don't have any room for him, which is why he was exposed to begin with, or why the Cubs traded him to the Tigers to begin with. They have too many righties. They had Fergie Jenkins, they had Bert Hooton, Rick Russell, Milt Pappas. Just too many righties with the Cubs, so Hands had to move on. And you see by '73 he moves on to the Twins and the Rangers. Frankly, Hands is too good to put on waivers. So what you do is, this is what happens. You make him a keeper, but he gets traded before the season, before the draft starts. And in a league that has a lot of keepers, you see we have 5 already, it's gonna, some of these teams, and it might be the Tigers, are going to find out that the teams aren't going to call for a trade because they realize you could pick up Bill Hands off waivers if the Tigers get stuck. So Bill Hands could be traded for cheap, just so the Tigers get something back in compensation. So they're in good shape, though, the Tigers. I'm not really worried about their performance moving forward. This is fine. I joked about getting too old, but Cash, K-Line, and Coleman particularly. Cash, K-Line, and Coleman, and perhaps Stanley. 3 of those 4 guys are just going to continue doing what they're doing. And now you got Fred Sherman, the 8th player and final player to look at here. Big year for him in 71. Might have been, and he's with a couple teams here. The Tigers, Houston, eventually the Expos. But the 71 season, that's his best year. Whip's a little on the high side, 123. Dominance against lefties, so he had 20 saves. And he's got Hiller with him. He's a luxury item. You know, to have Hiller and Sherman, so you can go lefty, righty, lefty with George Culver in between them, is very, that's how you win close games in Strat. That's how you win road games, too. 72, he's still okay. Whip's kind of high. 73, it's high again. This could be this breaking point we're talking about, where you just have too many guys you want to keep. And the best news I can say is he throws left-handed. So he'll have a job. He's not going to worry about the unemployment line. He'll have a job. His performance is not overwhelming at all. His whip never gets below 1.3. I don't really care about that if he can get left-handed batters out, period. If righties light him up, I don't care if righty-handed batters light him up. Just get the lefties out. He's 27 years old here. But I think he's going to have to go on waivers. If they were short in the keeper pool, they'd keep him. But they reckon that they see the writing on the wall. There's just nobody that's going to make a trade for a guy like that. But he will be sought after because there's a shortage of left-handed pitching. And again, sometimes you get these handshake agreements that say, we'll put you on waivers, but if nobody claims you, you can come back to us. Because you have Hiller. Once you have Hiller, it's not that important to get a great, and you have Lolich. You've got Lolich and Hiller. If you've got 2 amazing left-handers like that, the 3rd lefty in your organization is really not that important as it is to other teams. So that's it for the Tigers. Keeping 5, waiving 3. Nobody in retirement, because it's Detroit, folks. they don't retire. They keep playing baseball forever in Detroit. They just don't. They're playing right now next to Tigers, next to Comerica Park, whatever that's called. They got a little stadium there, and guys are still playing. All right. All foolishness aside, thanks for checking this out, folks, and we'll see you next time.